Welcome back. According to the 2022 Summer Reliability Assessment published by the North American Reliability Corporation, a nonprofit corporation formed by the electric utility industry to promote the reliability and adequacy of bulk power transmission in the electric utility systems of North America, several parts of the continent are at elevated or high risk of energy shortfalls this summer. There is so much to unpack here. Let me get to the point. We're talking about the Western United States, Texas, the southwestern part north of Texas, but south of the Midwest, something called the Mid-Continent ISO, which is the high risk category, and that particular operator controls the Midwest. They're facing capacities and shortfalls in its north and central areas during both normal and extreme conditions due to generator retirements and an increased demand. The Mid-Continent system is without a key transmission line connecting its northern and southern areas as restoration continues on a 4-mile section of a major transmission line that was damaged by a tornado back in December. So what are we talking about? A bunch of things are coming together at the same time that's going to prove rough summer. Number one, drought. Drought is causing an additional demand and a diminished capacity, particularly for hydroelectric generating plants in the West. Less water, less electricity. Also, something called a thermal generator that uses the water to cool the system as it generates electricity. Again, same problem. Also, the excessive heat puts a strain on the grid itself, the actual physical grid. Finally, we're not adding energy storage, solar, wind power at a rate fast enough to offset retirements of coal-fired and some nuclear plants. What does that mean? These coal plants, these nuclear plants have a fixed life, a fixed number of years that when they're built, they're engineered to last that long. When they get to the end of life, particularly with all the pressures now, they want to take them out of service. But because renewable energy is not constant, the sun doesn't always shine, the wind doesn't always blow, and the fact that although power companies and grid operators are adding energy storage systems, we're not adding enough fast enough to store this to offset the retirement of these older systems. Like any major company that has major capital budgeting issues, you just don't throw some Band-Aids on a coal-fired plant that's at the end of its useful life and get it to run. They're at a point where it's going to take major investment. So what's the problem? The problem is that to keep these plants running, because they're running without the major investment, they're throwing Band-Aids at it, which means we might be counting on these plants for what they call base load at a time where they can't handle the strain and may fail simply because we needed them and because we needed them at the end of their lives, and that the utility company doesn't have a multi-year plan to keep them online that may take millions of dollars and several years to refurbish the plants to keep them running. They don't know because the grid operators at best are giving you a year-to-year situation. They have to go before the utility boards to be able to shut it down. And right now, fears of these shortages because of weather and in spite of weather may cause them to keep them online. And here's something else that nobody thought about. These coal-fired plants have another problem. They're old, but they may not be able to get the coal they need to actually operate because of how the coal industry has changed as the electric industry has largely moved to natural gas. Coal mines, coal mining, and coal transport is all changed. And those are long-term contracts. So it's not a matter of calling somebody saying, I need 100 tons of coal, or I need a half a million tons of coal. Can you deliver it next week? No, you can't do it like that. The power operators are in a bind. They know that to protect the integrity of the entire grid in an extreme weather situation across the country, that they got to keep these plants in service. But these plants are at the end of their lives. They need either to replace them, which is what they had planned to do, but they're not there yet, or refurbish them, which is a multi-year, multi-million-dollar situation. So what do?
I mean, I don't know. I guess I feel I have a few bones to pick. This is as serious of an issue as it is. I don't, where is the America of the can-do I feel like we grew up with in World War II when we had to scale up, when we had a serious issue in front of us. In a year, we put the force of the government behind people, put money behind people, paid workers, American workers. We got stuff done and unbelievable when you how fast we created ships and planes and this and that. On the other end too, like even just looking at Mid-America's profits in the last 2 years and some of these energy companies' profits very recently, I know they're capital intensive. I know they got to get money to shareholders. We're talking just Mid-America net income, 100% increases over the last 2 years. The excuses are running thin for me on both ends. It's like, if this is a really serious issue where people are going to extreme heat, utilities running out, that's people's lives on the line. I feel like there was a lot of stuff in Build Back Better bill that was about energy utility, and there was stuff we can do. There is stuff we can do, but all I hear is, even in our climate change story about the water out west, a lot of the answer is, why do we build out west? That was stupid.
But here's the problem. Like the auto industry.
There's long lead times, I agree, but if we really throw things behind, if we throw the weight, I think we can do things faster. I do think we can.
If there was no pandemic, I'd agree with you. But the pandemic has totally screwed. I'm sorry, it's a scapegoat. I know.
Man on the moon in 9 years.
Yeah.
9.
And most of the stuff back then was made in America.
9 years.
We have a global supply chain now, whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
We're transitioning back source, but that takes time. It takes time. There's no way around it. When these companies spent the money to build these plants, they had a 20-year, a 30-year, a 40-year useful life. I worked for a utility. They plan this way. They plan the obsolescence. They know that, okay, our investment has a curve to it, and we're going to allocate investment. But when you're looking at a utility, where do you start? The plants are only part of it. You've got a grid. You've got the need to transmission lines. You've got
for sure.
Return on investment.
By letter of importance. Because you know what we're going to hear? We're going to hear this is the green economy's fault. It's because we're shutting down coal plants. It's because we're trying to get away from oil because of all those hippies that now we're going to have energy problems. It's not going to be anything about climate change. It's not going to be anything about drought. It's going to be because of the windmills and solar panels, we are losing energy.
The bottom line, the final thought I got before we go to break is that because of and in spite of climate change is where we're at now. Because of climate change, we have this extreme weather more frequently, which has put a stress on the grid. Because of how our grid is regulated, not really federal, it's basically state by state, we don't have a national plan cohesively because most of these assets are owned by public invested companies, public companies that have other goals in mind.
A former Tesla executive is launching an EV farm tractor company. That's next.